Good morning. I'm Eric Lee, Director of the Kimball Art Museum. Thank you for coming to the museum on this very beautiful day, and I'm thrilled to see that we have a completely full house. The Kimball is honored to present this exhibition following its celebrated showing at the Frick Collection in New York, and delighted that the extraordinary works in the exhibition upstairs have now made their way to Fort Worth. The exhibition brings us into the orbit of one of the most revered sites in the world, the Church of the Holy Sepulcher in Jerusalem. Christian tradition holds that this church is built over the location of Calvary, where the crucifixion took place, and also over the location of Christ's empty tomb, where the resurrection occurred. The treasures in the exhibition date from the 16th through the 18th centuries and have long found their home in Jerusalem. However, they were created in Western Europe, commissioned by Catholic monarchs, figures like Louis XIV of France or Philip IV of Spain, who sent the treasures to Jerusalem as gifts to the church for liturgical use. These works have now traveled to the United States for the very first time. When they return to Jerusalem following the close of the exhibition in Fort Worth, they will be housed in the Terra Sancta Museum, now under construction and we hope soon to open. The Church of the Holy Sepulcher has always been a shared space, administered through delicate arrangements among 6 Christian communities. The treasures in the exhibition, however, have been entrusted to a single entity, the Custodia de Terra Sancta, or Custody of the Holy Land. This is a branch of the Catholic Franciscan order established by the Pope in 1342 to safeguard the Church of the Holy Sepulcher and other holy sites in the Middle East. I'm so grateful to the custody, and especially Fra Stéphane Milovitch, the custody's director of the Office of Cultural Heritage, for allowing the treasures to be seen at the Kimball. To be in Fort Worth for the opening of the exhibition and to be with us this morning, Fra Stéphane has traveled from Jerusalem at this extremely trying time. Fra Stéphane has been a member of the Franciscan order since the early 1990s and was ordained to the priesthood in Jerusalem in 2000 during the Jubilee year. Prior to entering religious life, he studied mathematics in his native France and later pursued advanced studies in liturgy at the Benedictine Academy of San Anselmo in Rome, where the topic for his doctoral thesis was the Franciscans' daily procession of the Paschal Mystery at the Church of the Holy Sepulcher. Fra Stéphane has played a central role in the stewardship and interpretation of the custody's collections, and he has been closely involved in the development of the Terra Sancta Museum, of which he is chairman of the board of directors. The Terra Sancta Museum is an ambitious initiative designed to display the custody's historical collections and to illuminate the long Franciscan presence in the Holy Land. Joining Fra Stéphane in conversation is a great friend of the Kimball, Xavier F. Salomon, who curated the exhibition, along with Jacques-Charles Gaffio, who is with us this morning, and Benoit Constançou. Xavier recently became director of the wonderful Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon, Portugal. But before that, he was a longtime deputy director of the Frick Collection in New York, where the exhibition originated. Xavier is a renowned art historian, and during COVID, he also became something of a celebrity with his popular series of online videos for the Frick called Cocktails with a Curator, which now has a companion book which you can buy in the museum store upstairs. Xavier received his PhD in art history from the Courtauld Institute in London. Earlier in his career, he worked at the Dulwich Picture Gallery, where he curated the Salvator Rosa exhibition in partnership with the Kimball around 15 years ago. Shortly thereafter, Xavier moved to the United States, where he became the curator of Southern Baroque paintings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, before moving to the Frick to become deputy director in 2014. At the Frick, he supervised the renovation of the galleries during the recent expansion, moving them first in 2021 to the Frick Madison and then back to the historic location of the museum, which opened in April of last year. Among Xavier's many exhibitions, a standout is Paolo Veronese, Magnificence in Renaissance Venice, held at the National Gallery, London, several years ago. He has received many honors, including being awarded the prestigious honor Knight of the Order of the Star of Italy, awarded in 2018 by the President of the Republic of Italy for promoting Italian culture. And just months ago, he received the Order of Merit of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulcher. I'm tremendously grateful to Xavier for inviting the Kimball to partner with the Frick on the exhibition and for giving so generously of his time to be in Fort Worth during the installation and opening events. Before turning the program over to Xavier and Fra Stéphane, I want to state how grateful I am to all our colleagues at the Frick for sharing their exhibition with the Kimball, including Director Axel Ruger and Jenna Nugent, the Frick's head of curatorial and exhibition projects, who is in the audience. Xavier, Salomon, and Fra Stéphane will now discuss the exhibition and the Terra Sancta Museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for the very generous introductions. And it is a real pleasure for both of us to be here at the Kimball this morning and having spent some time here in wonderful Fort Worth installing the show and opening the show. I hope you will all enjoy it in the next few months. And it is really extraordinary to be able to have these treasures here in Northern Texas and share them with all of you. I always remind people that this exhibition, every single object you will see is in the United States for the very first time. None of these objects have been seen here before. And I think it's fair to say that all of them will probably never come back as a group in the foreseeable future once the museum opens. I hope not to disappoint anyone without cocktails today. It's just going to be water. But we're going to be in conversation about some of the broader issues around the exhibition. We're not going to give you a virtual tour of the exhibition, but in a way, what we would like to do is bring you with us to Jerusalem. Of course, Jerusalem is one of the most important cities in the world when it comes to the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and for very different reasons. And what I'm hoping is that the exhibition brings some of the city to you at a time particularly when it's very difficult to go there with the current war. And of course, we're all hoping that that will be resolved as quickly as possible. So we will talk a little bit about how this incredible treasure fits within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, why the Franciscans are there. But we will also talk about the museum that will eventually conserve, keep, display these objects. I think it's very unusual to display masterpieces from a museum that doesn't quite exist yet. So this is a museum that will hopefully open in the next couple of years. There's still a lot of work to be done that is kind of carrying on and happening in a very thorough and good way in Jerusalem. But we will give you a bit of a preview of what this museum will look like. And so it is a real pleasure to be here with Fra Stéphane. We've worked now for many years on this project. I was lucky enough to be in Jerusalem a number of times, visiting Fra Stéphane and the friars of the Custodia. Most recently, I was there last year for Easter. We are approaching Easter week, and you will see a little bit from Easter last year in this presentation. So, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So, Fra Stéphane, do you want to tell us a little bit about it, especially since you also were the guardian of the Holy Sepulchre until last year?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be there, and I thank this institution to welcome us and to welcome the Treasury of the Holy Sepulchre. I have been living in Jerusalem since '92, so quite a lot now. Until September, I was the superior of the Latin community of the Holy Sepulcher, a place that is exceptional. We'll speak about it and all the community living inside later on. The Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher has been built on the tomb of Jesus. It includes also the Calvary of the crucifixion and many other small shrines. For instance, the place where Jesus met Maria Magdalene after the resurrection, also the place where they found the true cross in the 3rd century. So since the 4th century, there is a basilica that is built on those places. And before, there was a pagan temple that was built by Adrian to force the Christian to leave the place of the resurrection. And they built a pagan temple to profanate the place. And in a certain way, thanks to this profanation, it was a way to conserve the memory buried under the pagan temple. And in the 4th century, we removed the pagan temple and we found the place of the event of the resurrection. In those days, there have been many excavations, and they also found the garden that was around the tomb. So this place is a unique place. For me, it's a place of ecumenism, even if sometimes people think it's a place of division. And it's a beautiful place to have a liturgy every day. We normally welcome thousands of pilgrims, maybe 5 to 7 million of pilgrims normally come every day, every year at the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher. Now, because of the war, there are few of those, but we wish that very soon pilgrims can come again, because the war will finish, and all the war finish in a certain moment.
I think it's important to understand that the church and Jerusalem have gone through a lot of historical and sort of differences and passages, which is obviously very difficult to recap in 5 seconds. But the history of the Middle East, as you can imagine, is very fraught and complicated. But you have to imagine a country, an area in the Middle East along the Mediterranean, which to begin with was inhabited by people of different pagan religions. And then this became the promised land of Judaism, of course. And so Jerusalem is the key city for the Jewish religion. Subsequently, of course, the historic figure of Jesus Christ was born and died in that part of the world, in Bethlehem, in Jerusalem. And so it is the key place for Christianity, and especially the Holy Sepulcher, as the site of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Subsequently, with the creation of Islam and the Muslim world, also became a key city, because it's believed that the Prophet Muhammad left for his night journey into the skies, into heaven, from Jerusalem. So all 3 monotheistic religions have very important reasons to claim Jerusalem for their religion. Of course, in terms of historic sort of belonging of the city, let's say, under the Roman Empire, of course, was a Roman province. Titus and then Hadrian destroyed Jerusalem twice, and that is the beginning of the dispersal of the Jewish people away from their promised land. But of course, at the end of the Roman Empire, it is taken over by Islam. And there is only about 100 years between the 10th century and the 11th century. With the First Crusade, the victory of the Christians at the First Crusade, Jerusalem becomes a Christian city. Jerusalem is a Christian city for a very short time within the larger history of that world, that part of the world. And it is really the exhibition. When you look at the objects in it, you have to think that in the 17th, 18th century, Jerusalem is part of an Islamic empire. So first, earlier on, it's under the Mamelukes of Egypt, with a capital in Cairo. And later on, in the period that's covered by the show, Ottoman Turkish, with the capital in Istanbul. And it's really not until the 20th century that changes. So we're looking at a Christian community which is a minority at that time in a Muslim-run country, let's say, province. And even to this day, the Christian community in Jerusalem is 1% of the population of Jerusalem. So we're looking at a small group. And within that group, as we will discuss in a second, at the Holy Sepulcher, there are a number of different denominations. At the time of the Crusades, of course, there were the Christians. The Christians was one and unified, more or less. But in fact, there were a number of divisions already then, and that then ends up with a number of different, as I say, denominations that share and work together at the sepulchre. But when it comes to the Roman Catholics, the Latins, obviously the Franciscans are the presence that is there since the 14th century. So why the Franciscans? Why St. Francis?
During the Crusaders in 1217, the first friar came in Jerusalem. They were part of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. They were very, very few. They were minority friar. And then when Jerusalem was, when Christian left Jerusalem and all the Holy Land, the friar wanted to come back again, and they were alone without any protection of the church, without any protection of the military of the Latin Kingdom. So they tried to come in a very low profile. In 1219, you have here the painting that is kept in the convent of St. Xavier. For the first time, there was a peaceful meeting between St. Francis that came in Egypt and met the Sultan of Egypt in Damietta, in the delta of the Nile River. And for the first time, there was a meeting between Francis and Salah ad-Din, first meeting between somebody from the church with somebody from the Islamic world. And the meeting was very peaceful, very sympathetic. The Sultan have a lot of sympathy for St. Francis, and if they were able to stay longer, maybe they would have become also friends. And because of this meeting that is very important for the Franciscan order, we see how Francis and the Sultan were able to dialogue. And the friar for 8th century, we are now in the Holy Land, we look at this moment to be able to dialogue with the local population for for a long time, 700 years with the Muslim population. There were also Jewish people that were also under the rule of the Mameluke and then the Ottoman, and we tried to build bridges with those communities. So for us, this moment is very important. We have to say that till the 14th century, till the end of the 19th century, the Franciscans were the only presence in the Latin world in Jerusalem. So there was no sisters, no diocesan priest, no bishop, nothing. Nobody wanted to live with the Ottoman in this period, so we were the only presence of the Catholic Church, no Protestant, we were alone with the Oriental churches in the different world. But thanks to the providence, we were able to stay with many difficulties like we have today, but we go on and we wish to stay many centuries again.
And of course, this year particularly, it's a coincidence. The show wasn't planned around that, but it is the anniversary of St. Francis's death. Is the 800th anniversary. He died in 1226 in Italy, in Assisi. So there is a sort of series of projects around the world, as you can imagine, celebrating the death of this, fundamental saint within the Catholic Church, one of the most popular and most important figures in the Middle Ages, who really reshaped the Catholic Church in a number of ways through the creation of Franciscanism. But the presence of the Franciscans in Jerusalem is really dictated by two, let's say, powers, external powers, which are, of course, the Ottoman Empire and the papacy.
The document you see just there is the document that was written by Baybars II, the Sultan of Cairo, in 1309. This is one of the very important documents we have in our collection. This is the document through which we were able to live inside the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre. We do not own the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre. The Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre was locked, closed. A Muslim family has the key of the Basilica. And today you still see the Muslim family opening and closing the door, but the door is open during the day. In this period, till the middle of the 19th century, the door was always closed. So it opens maybe few times in 1 year. And thanks to this document, the friars were able to enter in the basilica, to live inside. There was no possibility of cooking, or it was no sewage. The situation was a little bit complicated. And thanks to this, the friar put the first foot inside the basilica, and we begin to have our daily liturgies in the tomb. We begin to do the daily procession that we are still doing today, and we are praying inside the basilica for the Catholic Church and to thanks the Lord for the redemption that he gives to all the humanity, Christian and also the other people. And we, as I said, begin to have the solemn liturgy, daily liturgy, solemn liturgy. You understand that in this church we celebrate every day the feast of the resurrection of the Lord, but for the feast of Easter, because it is the place and because it is the day, the liturgy of Easter is very solemn. And that's why we receive many gifts. Some of those are inside the exhibition, but we are very happy to present to the Texan people in these days and to you today. And many of those works of art were used for the solemn masses inside the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher.
And of course, the second document is the papal creation of the custody.
So the first friar arrived in the beginning of the 13th century, and quite after, in 1342, the Pope Clement VI was not in Rome, was in Avignon in this period, and there were only the Franciscans living in the Holy Land for the Catholic Church. And with this document, officially, the Pope gave to the Franciscans the custody of the Holy Sepulcher and also of all the other shrines. We would be able to get back for the Catholic Church. So the first one we get back was the Holy Cenacle, then the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher. Maybe 10, 20 years later, we enter in the Basilica of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And till today, now we are in charge of 55 shrines linked with the redemption. Many of those are in Jerusalem, but also in Israel, Palestine, and we have also some shrines in Syria and in Jordan. So in all those shrines, we are supposed to take care of the shrine, to pray in those places, and to welcome the pilgrim that come. During the centuries, in some moment they came, then they stopped coming because of difficulties. Like in those days, 2 years ago, before the 7th of October, there were many pilgrims. Now there are less pilgrims who are used to see these different moments, and we are sure later on many others will come back. So we pray in the shrine, we welcome the pilgrims, and in the shadow of the shrines, there are also the local Christians that since 200 years live in the Holy Land, and we have pastoral care with those Christians by, we are the parish priests of those people, we have schools, and we have many links with the local population.
And, obviously it is interesting because, St. Francis was Italian. As you can imagine, the first followers of Francis in his early years were people from Assisi, from, his own friends. But very quickly, already during his lifetime, the Franciscan order, the first Franciscans, were an international community. They were not just Italians. Even though Italian still is the language of the order, today there's about 80 friars at St. Xavier, more or less.
In St. Xavier, we are more or less 80 friars, and I would say we are almost 180 friars living in Jerusalem, and 300 friars in the custody to take care about all the shrines. I live in the mother house. That is the house where we have the seminarians, the old age friar, and the custos, that is from this convent, taking care of the administration of all the parishes, churches, shrines, and the life of the custody.
And you have to imagine that, having spent some time with the community there in Jerusalem, it is a very varied community of people of all ages and all geographical provenances. I mean, there are Americans, there are South Americans, Africans, Asians, Europeans.
I think in St. Xavier we are more or less 80 friars, and I think we have 41 different passports. So we are really from all the world.
And it's an extraordinary community. So we discussed earlier on quickly the fact that there are different Christian denominations at the Holy Sepulchre. So of course, already the Middle East is a very complicated part of the world with different religions, but even within a church, within Jerusalem, there are divisions, but at the same time, divisions that it's often exaggerated how there are rivalries between these different Christian denominations. In fact, they live very peacefully together, and I witnessed that, and I think there's lots of wonderful collaborations. Latins trying to teach Latin to the Greeks teaching Greek to the Latins, and things like that, and lots more, obviously. But this map gives you a sense of those 6 denominations and the areas that are under their care, let's say. There are 2 areas, I'm going to stand up to point out with the laser. So the square outside the church, and this is the entrance to the church, and the area around the stone of unction, and then the rotunda around the tomb, including the tomb of Christ, are shared areas that don't belong to anyone specifically. The light blue areas that you see here, the Catholicon, that is Greek Orthodox. The purple area up here, the Chapel of the Magdalene, and part of the convent, which was more or less on the site of the Patriarchate in the Crusader time, and half of Calvary, and the chapel where the relics of the cross were found, St. Helena. Those are Latin, Roman Catholic. Then you have the Armenian Chapel of Helena, and a gallery, and one chapel on the main square. And then in sort of orange-red, you have the Copts, and the Syrians in lighter yellow. They don't have a lot of real estate, I'm afraid. And the Ethiopians, who have this entire area. But what you don't understand from this map is that, in fact, this all works on different levels. So, for example, Calvary, you see there are stairs because this area was a hill originally, and it's higher in the church than everything else. And the area where the Ethiopians are is much higher than the grotto and the Chapel of St. Helena, which in themselves are on 2 different levels. So from the Catholicon, you go down to St. Helena and further down to the Grotto of the Cross. But the orange area is the roof above that. So it's a very complicated site in terms of architecture, but that is part of the fascination of the place. I'm assuming some of you have been, many of you probably have not. So we wanted to give you a bit of the flavor of the place and make you understand how this church worked for centuries. In fact, these divisions between the denominations were codified in the 18th and then 19th century through a set of rules known as the status quo, which still dictates every activity within the church. So who says Mass at which altar, what time, which procession takes place when. And one of the biggest misconceptions about the Holy Sepulchre, I think, is this idea that it is this peaceful, mystical place where everything is so ordered and precise. In fact, it's very chaotic. And I always joke that it's closer to Penn Station than it is to a church, as you can imagine it, because you have to imagine different services happening at the same time in different parts of the church with different musics, different instruments, different chanting, different prayers. And it is incredible. And crowds of different backgrounds who have access to the tomb at different times. And it's packed, as you can imagine, and especially obviously during holy festivities and Holy Week. We were going to show you a few videos just to give you a sense of this, and also to make you understand how it is not a static church building in the sense that there is a high altar and everyone celebrates at the high altar. There are a number of different chapels, shrines within the church, the basilica, and priests, religious figures, pilgrims move around the church constantly. So it is this sense of moving around the tomb of Christ, almost as a sort of symbolic center of this church. And in terms of the way it's designed, planned, and used, it's unique in the world. There's no other church in the world that functions in this way. So we're going to start with two Oriental Christian ceremonies, just to give you a sense. This is around the stone of Ancha near the entrance.
This is during the night, by something like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That's why there are not so many people.
I was lucky enough to spend the night at the Sepulcher and be able to witness, because of course the ceremonies take place while the church is open, but also once it's closed. So overnight, there are a number of celebrations, masses, prayers that continue. They're also outside the church. So here are the Armenians outside the And in terms of a Catholic, a Latin ceremony, this is one of the processions that the procession takes place in the church every day in the evening. But of course, this is during Holy Week, so it's a grander procession, let's say, with the patriarch, the Latin patriarch, Cardinal Pizzaballa, who I'm not sure if that happened before, but also used to be the custos.
Used to be the custos.
And then became patriarch. I'm not sure if that has happened ever before, that a custos becomes patriarch. But
it happened twice.
Okay, so quite rare. But here you see a Catholic ceremony. And you hear, of course, the praying, the singing, but you also in the background hear other denominations singing in their ceremony. It's a little difficult to pick up maybe from the video, but it's there. And I should point out two other things. In both videos, the first and the last one, you hear sort of banging on the floor with sort of batons. And every denomination has bodyguards, effectively, called the kawas, who guarantee that the ceremonies take place properly and orderly. And so they usually open the way with these two maces with which they sort of open the way for the procession. And of course, then, the Catholic secret weapon, of course, is the organ, because having the organ drowns a lot of the other people's music very effectively. So that you can be sure when there is a Catholic ceremony, thanks to the organ, which the others don't have. So, but this was just to give you a little bit of the flavor. It's very difficult.
Secret weapon. I like that.
Yeah. So, my question to Fra Stéphane is, what are the Franciscans doing in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land? So, what is their mission?
So the picture you see is Palm Sunday in front of the Adicola of the Holy Sepulcher. So, as I said before, the friars are inside the shrines and they pray during the year, in this moment, Palm Sunday procession, inside the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher. So our mission is to pray in the name of the Church inside the shrines and to develop liturgy. We have a lot of liturgy, more than in the normal convent. We have the night prayer, 1 hour of prayer between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. We have the early masses in the day. We have the Vespers, the Compline, the daily procession, that is 1 hour from 4 till 5 o'clock. So we are very present in a liturgical point of view in all the shrines. And we don't only pray, we are not like monks that pray almost all the day. When we done the celebration, we go to work, and then we are serving the local Christian community. Here you see children from the schools that are playing a game with some Franciscan. So we have many schools, parishes, a lot of activities, social activities. We have many people working for the custody because we have also guest houses in which we welcome the pilgrims. So we have a lot of activities with the local Christian that since 200 years live inside the church. So we are pastoral agent for the local church of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem is not only a church with local people, but we have also many pilgrims coming inside the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher. Here you see children during the Good Friday liturgy in Calvary that is kissing the relic of the cross. It's not the relic of the cross that we have here in the exhibition. The relic in the exhibition is used for the 14th of September for the exaltation of the cross in the same place. This relic in the Byzantine style is the relic we use for Good Friday. And so we are welcoming many pilgrims in the Basilica. Maybe some of you have already come in the Holy Land, so we have friars that are guiding the groups. Normally in the Basilica of the Holy Sepulcher we have something like 25 to 30 masses every day that are celebrated by groups coming from all over the world. So we also have a school, university of Bible and archaeology, and we studied all the holy places to try to understand the history of each places, and this we try also to explain to the pilgrim the history of each place. Is not only a place to pray, but also a place to understand. So the friars are living to pray in the Holy Sepulcher, in charge of the local population, and also welcoming the church, the universal church, through the pilgrims. In the beginning, the pilgrims were mostly European, till the 18th century. Now the pilgrims are from all over the world, and we also receive many tourists. Here you have a celebration that is held on the Stone of Unction on Good Friday. And as I said before, we receive many gifts from kings, from important people that could not come to the Holy Land, but wanted to be present through their gifts. So, for instance, on the Stone of Unction, you see the Christ after his crucifixion. There is a small statue that is here on the Stone of Unction, and the custers anoint the statue. And you see plates from the 17th century, given from the King of Spain. The plate contained in this moment the crown of Jesus, the chiodi, what is
the nails,
and the
pliers with which
everything what was used to put Jesus down on the cross, and then Jesus will be buried. Also the vestments, I don't know if you see the vestments, but they are black vestments given by Isabel II, King of Spain. So as you see, many people could not come in the Holy Land, and they give very nice works of art, and each vestments, each object has the coat of arms of the donator, and they were given to the Holy Land. So it's a way for those people to be present during the celebration. During 8 centuries, we have been in the Holy Land, and we try to keep those gifts that were not given to the Franciscan, but to the holy places. So as custodian of the holy places, we try also to maintain the patrimony of the holy places. And every year we use many of those works of art, and we keep them, not because we are a museum, but we keep them because every year we need those objects, so we know we will reuse them, so we keep them in a jealous way. And what is very interesting is many of those objects disappeared from Europe. As you would say better than me, in France we had the revolution that get rid of many works of art that were melted to take back the gold, earthquake in Portugal, and many difficulties in Europe. And the Ottoman Empire, that was a very difficult place for the church. The Ottoman Muslims were not so easy, but a place that was not so easy, in a place like that, we succeed to maintain the patrimony that will disappear from the region from where those objects came. And it's very important for us to see also that we have a European patrimony. If you go to Napoli, you will find Italian works of art. If you go to Barcelona, you will see Spanish works of art. But we have a collection that is more universal and that was preserved. And this was, I would say, something incredible, like a miracle.
And I think, paradoxically, the usage of these objects is what guaranteed their survival. But it's also the rare usage. So, if you're using vestments every day, they will wear out quite quickly. But if you use them once a year and keep them properly stored in between, they survive several hundred years. So here you see, friars wearing the Isabel II Good Friday vestments with the coat of arms of Spain, with the castles and towers of Castilla and Leon. Those are only used for Good Friday. They're not used otherwise. In the same way that the containers for sort of spices here and the dish, the 17th, 18th century from Poland, from Spain, they're used for this ceremony. They're not used otherwise, and they're just kept stored. So this yearly usage of these objects is what guaranteed their survival in a place which was inherently fraught historically, politically, with a number of wars and historic events, but never underwent the French Revolution or the earthquake of Lisbon or those sort of things that in Europe destroyed vast quantities of patrimony. So I keep saying this in the exhibition, every object you see there, the Neapolitan objects, there's nothing like that in Naples. The Venetian objects, there's nothing like that in Venice. The Portuguese ones, there's nothing like that in Portugal. France, Spain, same thing. So they are really, both in terms of textiles and in terms of goldsmith, silversmith work, they're unique examples. So why does the custody own these objects or takes care of these objects rather? And what is the plan for the museum?
So Cardinal Pizzaballa, when he was Custos of the Holy Land, wanted to create a museum. We were able to save all this patrimony, but not everybody can see the works of art unless you are here the day we use them for the liturgy. But we do not have so many persons present in those very small moments. So we would like to create a museum, first of all, to share with everybody nice works of art. And the museum for us is a way to create bridges. First of all, Christians are not so many. We have only 1% Christian in Jerusalem, but the Christianity in Jerusalem in the last 2,000 years is very important for the politics of the land. So it's very important to show that the Christians still exist, as you have the Islamic Art Museum, the Museum of Israel, that are very nice and important museum. It's important also to have a Christian museum in a land where everybody tries to enlarge its own land. We want, of course, we are saving our small properties also, but we want to extend our presence in the cultural field. In culture, the land is not limited. And for us, it's important to extend our cultural field. The church is a community that doesn't think only about our community. We, since a long time, have hospital, schools, and many activities, and the activities are not limited to Latin, to Christian. But since the 15th century, for instance, we have in Saint Xavier a big pharmacy. Big pharmacy we found also, we thought it was from the 16th century, but we found during excavation vases from the 15th century, vases of pharmacy. So we know since a long time we have pharmacy, and we have been medicated, of course, Christian, but also Muslim, Jewish people, pilgrim, because for the church, everybody is saved by the blood of Jesus. So every person is important. So in the museum, in the Christian museum, we want to show that the local Christians still are in Jerusalem, but the church take care about also the others. So we would that the Jewish community, Muslim community, and of course pilgrims, people without religion, can also feel at home in those places. For instance, you can think maybe that liturgical works of art do not interest non-Christian or non-Catholic, but the works of art we got are the best works of art that a king was producing. When Louis XIV, that built the Castle of Versailles, sent a gift to Jerusalem, he doesn't send a gift in a low profile. He sent for God what he has better. And many Israeli Jewish people, they mostly have a Western culture. So they feel part of the Western culture. So they would all go to the Louvre to see also Christian painting, or to the Vatican Museum. When they go to Versailles, they feel that this is part of their patrimony. So this high-level gift from Europe is also part of their patrimony, even if they are Christian gifts. So they are interested by what we have. So it is also a way to dialogue with the Muslim. For instance, before you saw this firman, this document from 1309 that was produced by the Mameluke. When the Turkish arrived in 1517, they destroyed all the Mameluke documents. They were here now, so they destroyed the patrimony of before. So in the mosque, they burned everything, but they didn't burn what was kept in the churches. So in the custody, Franciscan, but also Greek Orthodox or Armenian, we still have documents from this period. And if you want to understand this civilization that was sovereign in Jerusalem for 250 years, it's important to know the document that they produced. So the church helped also the Muslim community to know better this civilization that ran the country for years. So what is important is to interest the other. And when you are interesting the others, they come to you, and it's a way for us to enter in dialogue with them. So the museum for us is a tool for us to show that we are in this country since a long time, that the Christians still live in this country, even if you don't see them, because they are very few, but they are present, they are very active, and it is also a way for the church to dialogue with the other. It is not the only way. We still have many schools that welcome other people. We have School of Music, where we have also students coming from Judaism or Islam. But we need many tools to create as much bridge as possible.
So the last part of this conversation is about the museum that is being built, created. We should say it's not being built from scratch. It's not a new building. It's actually part of the monastery of Saint Xavier. When the Franciscans arrived in Jerusalem, they were given the site of the Last Supper and Pentecost, the cenacle, and they kept that site until the 15th century, when the Islamic rulers moved them, sort of removed them from there and give them the monastery of Saint Xavier, which is still the headquarters of the custody. This is 5-minute walk, not even from the Holy Sepulcher. So, of course, the Catholics, like the Greeks and the Armenians and everyone else, have a presence at the Sepulcher, but they also have a mother sort of monastery site. There is a Greek patriarchate, there is an Armenian patriarchate. So within the walls, literally, of St. Saviour's Monastery, some historic spaces that were most recently used as a library, which has now been moved somewhere else, will be refitted to become the museum.
So you see here the division of what is going to be our museum. The number one, the yellow part, is Jerusalem as city of salvation. You will see later on the kind of object we will put. This is the introduction to the museum. And then you have part number 2 and 3. Part number 2 and 3 is the link with the relation we have with the local people, local Christian, activities with Muslim, activity with the Jewish people, with the local people. What is red is the treasury of the Holy Sepulcher. Those are the gifts that were given by the pilgrims, by kings from European countries. And not only European, we have some also gifts from America and from other countries, but mostly from Europe. So we work with the local people and the Universal Church. So we have these two sections in the museum. The green one on the top is for the educational program. So this is the room number 1. And as you see, you have the bas-relief of the resurrection that is kept in this exhibition, that we are very proud that it's in America in this moment. This is the theory of Jacques-Charles Gaffiot, the vice curator of this exhibition, to show that when you enter in a Christian museum, first of all, the first thing you need to see is something sumptuous that is a Christian place, and you have the resurrection of the Lord. You are Christian because Christ is risen, and Christ is not only a philosophy or mythology or something that never happened. Christ was risen because he was born in the country. Here you have the umbilic of the Nativity. This was supposed to be placed in Bethlehem, in the place where Jesus was born. This object is not here in the resurrection. So you have the Jesus very incarnated in this land. But Jesus incarnated in this land is present with two Occidental Western object, but also in the same place you have two Oriental objects. You have this big proscanetarion that is like an icon. It's not really an icon, but it looks like. This is an object that represents the life of Jesus inside the shrines. In Cana, the wedding of Cana. So you have many Epiphany in Bethlehem. So you have the local church that is also present in the first room of the museum. So this is the entrance of the museum. Then here you have the selection of icons. In this exhibition that you have here, mostly we loan the gifts of Europe. There is only the model of the resurrection in Mother of Pearl from the 17th century that is present. But we have a big collection of icons. There will be 3 rooms. You see one here. And what is interesting, everybody knows the Byzantine icon, the Russian icon. But there are also Christian, Oriental icons from Arab countries, Arabic icon. And among the Arabic icon, many people know the Coptic from Egypt or Syriac, but there is also icon from the School of Jerusalem. And here you have an icon from the School of Jerusalem. So we want also to emphasize on the Jerusalemetan icons that people do not know. And for us, it's important that the Christians of Jerusalem can be more aware of the patrimony that they product. In another room, you don't see all the rooms, you see some like that. This is the oldest organ of the world. This organ is from the 11th century, year 1000. So this is also 1 century before the Crusader arrived in Jerusalem. This organ was buried under the earth by the Crusader. when the Charismian Turkish arrived in Jerusalem. They killed everybody. They killed Christian, but also Muslim. There were people coming from east. And this organ, and also the bells, and also this object from the Middle Age, Crusader, candlestick, the vases, the pastoral of the Bishop of Bethlehem that he was holding in his hand during the liturgy. Everything was buried, and we by chance find this in 1906, after a long time. And this organ, we know that it's from the 11th century because of the letters that are written on it, that they are from the 10th, 11th century, and that gave the note of the single pipe, will be in the museum. And this organ is also very interesting because this is the oldest organ that still have a sound. Something like 10 pipes still have the original sound. And this is the oldest instrument of music that still have its sound. So this is something very important, not only for Christians, because music is for everybody. So this will be important. Here you have the basin that was pure silver, that was used by the casters of the Holy Land when the pilgrims were coming, and he washed the foot of the pilgrim like Jesus washed the foot of his disciple, because you receive a pilgrim that come from after a long, long trip by foot and by boat. You have the pirates that steal many things, and so on. So it was very difficult to arrive in Jerusalem, and the casters wanted to welcome them. Here you have a book written by a Frenchman, Thévenot, and on the book you see the casters washing the foot of the pilgrim, and we recognize the basin that was given by the king of Spain. So, okay. This is the mother of pearl. This is the model of the Holy Sepulcher that is still there. And here you have a photo of the 19th century where you see local Christians that are working with mother of pearl. So this model and the model of the Basilica of Bethlehem will be in the museum, but we have a big, big collection of mother of pearl, so we will also exhibit a lot of things that were done by the local Christian. The pharmacy, here you saw a very nice jar of pharmacy from the 19th century. We have something like 400 vases of pharmacy. Like I said before, the friar were medicating everybody. And here you saw, see, with medicating Jewish, Christian, Muslim. For the friar, it was forbidden to be doctor, according to the Franciscan rule. But in Jerusalem, because there was a necessity, we have the privilege to be able to medicate the people. And since the 15th century, this was the biggest apothecary of the Middle East. Here you have a picture of the apothecary before it was closed. This photo is from 1886. And you don't see all the vases, but you see a part of the vases. And in 1913, we decided to close this pharmacy because we stopped medicating the people with potion and something like that. So in this moment, the medication was by surgery or injection, so this was obsolete. But today, this would be maybe good to reuse. We still have the recipes, the name of the people that were medicating. We still have the vases, and in the museum we will reconstruct the pharmacy as it used to be. So there will be an entire room with all the vases. So this is part of the room of France. You have this chalice that is gifted by Louis XIV of France. If you reverse the chalice, you see the coat of arms of the king with the dedication, Ludovicus Decimus Quartus, and with the date, 1664. So here you have a lot of vessels. Some of it is present in the exhibition today. So this is the room of France, Louis XIII, XIV, and something also from the restoration after the French Revolution. Many of those artifacts will be present here. You will see them later. What is that? This is the part of the Italian room. Here you have the vestment of Genoa, beginning 17th century. This is one of the beautiful vestments of the Catholic Church. As you see, they were used. And this is the cope that you will see. We present this object in the exhibition. I think that it's in silk. I would say this is one of the nicest liturgical vestments of the Catholic Church. So we present in the exhibition the vestment of Louis XIII. You have more or less the complete set, and you have few pieces that belongs to a set. You don't have all the set, but we have hundreds of sets. So this is a very huge and big collection. So when you will see this vestment, you will see how nice are the embroideries, and you imagine if you have something like 15, 20 pieces from the same vestment. Okay.
So with this presentation, we sort of wanted to also point out that, of course, what you see in the exhibition is highlights from this extraordinary collection, and it's as you understand, it's a tiny fraction of the patrimony of the custody. The organ, musical instruments, the pharmacy, the non-European objects. It's a varied and very, very interesting collection. For the exhibition, we decided as curators with my two colleagues, where we selected the objects, to really focus on Europe in the 17th and 18th century, and also to focus on goldsmith, silversmith work and textiles. There are paintings that belong to the custody as well, some quite important and beautiful paintings. But in a way, we decided for museums like the Frick and the Kimball, it made more sense to show unique objects. The paintings, Neapolitan paintings by the Mura or Solimena, or the Master of the Annunciation to the Shepherds. I mean, those you can see in many museums in the world, in America and in Europe. But when it comes to the things, the objects you will see upstairs, there is, as I said, no comparative material anywhere else in Europe or in the world. So with this, we thank you for being here. We hope you will enjoy the exhibition upstairs. I think it's open. You can go upstairs and look at the real things. This is really just to give you a taste of what is to come. I mean, of course, the images of the museum are the future. Those are not photos of the museum as it exists. Right now, it's a building site. Those are architectural renderings of what those rooms will look like. But you are amongst the first people who are getting a sense of what this museum will eventually look like, hopefully in 2028 or around that time. And with that, we hope to welcome you all in this wonderful new museum in Jerusalem once it opens. Thank you.